Hi, this is Levi. Before we get into this episode, I wanted to take a quick minute to introduce a few of the other podcasts in the WCF Podcast Network. Tom and Naomi are exploring how we interact in our ecclesial relationships in From the Platform. It's a very in-depth series that is incredibly helpful for understanding and developing compassion and better listening practices. That's From the Platform. Sam Taylor from Cleveland, Ohio, produces weekly devotionals in Pause to Consider. Think Mr. Rogers meets Fireside Chat. I love Sam's humble style and think every episode is fantastic. You can find both of those wherever you get your podcasts or on our website at wcfoundation.org. Now, here's the show.
Welcome back to A Little Faith. This is a podcast sponsored by the Williamsburg Christadelphian Foundation. A Little Faith podcast explores both the challenges and hope of living a life of faith. I'm Steve, and I'm here with Kezia Reed. She works in homeless prevention support, making sure her organization engages with people before they lose their tenancies. Her organization also runs extreme weather shelters in winter and summer. Kezia has been a part of welcoming refugees and immigrants into the community. We're going to talk about the practicality of supporting asylum seekers, teaching scripture, and why this type of outreach is so important. It's wonderful to meet you, Kezia, and I'm fascinated by the work that you do, but I imagine it can be tough at times. Do you have times of frustration or despair at the system?
Well, yeah. Not to go into it too much, but yeah, there's just not enough housing. There's not enough affordable housing. And I sort of knew, I was aware of that before, but when you're in the midst of it and you think, gosh, even the smallest flat is just unaffordable for most people, that's quite obsessing actually. And it is frustrating at the moment because you think things should be happening. But there's always going to be issues, I think. And also, like I said earlier, I'm kind of inspired by how much like the general public really want to help individuals, how much faith-based charities really want to help people. I find that really, really interesting when people say, people don't want to help anymore. But yeah, it's very like grassrootsy and individuals and small groups that really want to make the changes and are really making like a big impact on people. But yeah, the system is frustrating, but there's always going to be issues, I think.
You know, one of the things that you talked about, and here's the question, but then I will. My daughter, who's 32, 33, whatever, is working. I don't know if you've ever heard of RVA Light, which is in Richmond.
I have, yeah.
Yeah.
I saw it online.
Started that with Dustin. Was basically her idea, and then she connected Dustin Elsey as a full timer, and she's still working as a school nurse, but doesn't want there. But anyway. I was visiting them and shooting some video for them about 3 weeks ago, something like that. And I was just learned so much in 3 days of talking to, people who say, I've been clean for 3 weeks, and I'm doing well. And they're like, but they're very articulate, this one guy. But he is a recovering drug addict, homeless. He's in there visiting in the morning at RVA Light and getting a cup of coffee. But I just learned that, as you just said in the answer to some question a moment ago, they're real people. That's what you learn.
Yeah.
Ran into something that was too big for him when,
oh my goodness, yeah.
Started. So this question is, what have you learned from the people you've connected with?
Yeah, it's a bit like that, I think, especially like alcohol addiction recovery and recovery from trauma as well. So much of it is like trauma-based. So when people are younger, relationships people have had, it's just trauma playing out in a lot of their actions. There's quite a lot of like research on that at the moment. And seeing people in that place and thinking, for them to be, and when people make a lot of like progress as well, you think, they have had to overcome so much and they are fighting, and for them to make small steps to make their life, just like rebuild their life, like it's incredible, like the resilience. So you're just meeting like really inspirational people. So just learned that I've been given so much stability and like love and care from growing up in like a loving family and having like a local church who are like a family, and then like a national church, and international church as well. Like, I've just been given so much help, and then meeting people who haven't had that but are still extremely resilient and inspiring and want the best of themselves and some of those other people as well. That is incredible. And yeah, just people who've really like lived and experienced things but are still like motivated to make like good changes and help people and things. That is, yeah. And like addiction as well, that's really, I've learned a lot about that, and like mental illness and things like that. Like, it's really, really tough for people. And yeah, it's been really interesting.
What does home mean to you, since you deal with homeless people?
Yeah. And this is quite interesting because I definitely work with the material side of things. But when you see people who are homeless, you're really focused on like, or get their income stabilised and make sure you clear all their debts and things like that and find them a stable place. And I think that is definitely like, it's almost a human right, isn't it? A safe place to stay, like a secure place to stay, like to live. But then there are the other things. There's like the local connections, this feeling of belonging and community. And when I think about home for me, it is just like feeling accepted and feeling like I can serve other people, feeling comfortable, feeling I can be myself. And that is a huge part of it. It isn't, yes, everyone needs a house, but then there's all the other stuff which comes with it. Like isolation and loneliness is just huge at the moment, isn't it? So I think, yeah, for home really, to feel at home. You can have a house but still feel like disconnected, can't you? So yeah, it's definitely people and good relationships and being able to help other people and be with other people. I think that's, for me, home really.
We do a build with Habitat for Humanity
Okay, yeah.
summer and take a group of people. Well, we've done it without Habitat a few times too because we've learned enough from them, but it's a lot easier using that group. And one of the things that I learned from them that really stuck with me is just the idea, just back to this idea of a house or a home, a place, how huge that is, even if it's one room.
Yeah.
You start thinking about what a house is or a home. It keeps all your stuff there. It keeps you dry, or at least mostly dry. Depends on the structure and whatever. But a lot of times I think we take a lot of that for granted. Don't really think about how it brings everything together to a central, safe place that you live out of. But without that, you're just disconnected.
Yeah. It's expensive as well. Like, from a practical side of it, meeting people who are rough sleeping, I think, yeah, you have to spend money on food all the time. You can never feel settled or grounded. You're just constantly on the move, being moved on constantly, really like insecure life. And that's really sad. And you just think you have to constantly be aware of people around you and things like that. And yeah, just not being able to like lock the door and things like that. It is, yeah, it's really, there's two elements, isn't there? There's like the physical side of needing that place, but also the belonging somewhere, definitely. Yeah, that's interesting.
Because I know with RVA Light, in the morning at 7 o'clock, they have to go out of the shelter. If they've qualified to be in a shelter.
Yes, yeah.
They have to leave.
Yeah.
So your life is not really your own because you don't have a home. You're being held by someone else who has rules.
Yeah.
It must be, frustrating.
Yeah, definitely. I think, it's also having like a life, isn't it? It's like having routine and purpose. It's because, like you said, it's 7 o'clock. What do? They very likely they don't go to work because of lots of different reasons. They probably can't go to work. So again, they're just living a very insecure, unsustainable life, and it just doesn't feel like they can really build a life and work for goals and things like that. They're sort of living hand to mouth, really. And yeah, it's nice that they've got that place. Like, is it RVA Light? RVA Light?
Right, for Richmond.
Oh, okay.
And that's sort of a common phrase in Richmond.
Okay.
So RVA means Richmond, Virginia.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, it sounds, from experience, I know those kind of places are a lifeline for people. Somewhere, like, a face they know And a faith feel like I'm going to go there and someone's going to want to talk to me and listen to me and signpost me to everyone, not just a service. Maybe especially if it's faith-based as well. There's another motivation behind there. That is huge, really. Yeah, it's really important.
In fact, you hit on several of the points that the interviews that I was doing with these people were saying. This is a better... I mean, they go to social service organizations and whatever, but they're sterile or just an office or whatever, but they come there and get a cup of coffee and sit down, and there's Rachel and Dustin.
Yeah.
Help them out. And the whole group of other people who are in that
absolutely.
situation. They come at 7 o'clock. Everybody comes in, sits down, and they're like in a cafe, coffee shop, and it makes them feel like they're a real person, as opposed to just walking down the street, go to the park and sit in the park on a park bench or whatever. Spend a few hours there and connect. And then there are recovery meetings that they hold there then of different types that they give the space to someone who's trained or, has groups. But it's very interesting, sort of non-traditional Christadelphian kind of a thing to do.
I think we have the kind of people in our community who would be amazing at that kind of thing as well, who've got experience from that and are very patient and good listeners and stuff. So I think, we should do more of it, definitely.
Spiritual homelessness, does that mean anything to you?
I thought about that, actually. I actually asked someone else. I said, what's spiritual homelessness? I didn't know whether it was an actual thing. But for myself, this kind of came from the idea of the other question about, like, what is homelessness to you? And for me, it was the fact that over the last 10 years, I've lived in, like, 4 different cities, over the UK. And I didn't get baptised until quite, like, late in my life. So I always felt like my spiritual life was kind of, like, stagnant. I never really felt like I was ready to sort of begin. It's a bit strange. So I moved to university and then moved to different cities for different jobs and things like that. And then, so every time I was in these different cities, like, I'd arrive and the city would feel quite exciting, but quite alien and, like, distant. And I'd always feel, no matter how much I, like, drove around or explored the city, I'd always feel quite detached. A bit strange. But then I'd like pluck up the courage to visit, like, the local Christadelphians, like the faith I've grown up with. And it would just be like this often very wacky group of old and young and very lovely and passionate and, like, wise different people. And they'd just be really welcoming and lovely. And that would feel like, it's kind of like a strange relief of, there's this group here who don't know who I am, but I've just walked in and they've just embraced me and they've invited me to everything, invited me into their house. And it would just sort of happen in every city, and it'd be very different groups of people, but they were all, like, massively part of, like, my faith journey. And I thought that was home to me. Like, no matter what I did in those cities, I could join a local group or, like, join the gym or something. I always felt this, like, disconnect. I felt like that was maybe spiritual homelessness. And I think our ecclesias are like, it's home. It suddenly feels like home, which is really lovely. And I think I definitely experienced that the last 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Really nice.
You've done a lot of work welcoming refugees and immigrants into the community.
Well, I suppose there's always been, like, different periods of time where there's been, like, different groups of people coming in and out of the UK, hasn't there? I think that's been, quite evident in our different Christadelphian churches and things. We've experienced that. Lots of people have come in and out. But very recently, lots of religious refugees have come in, and also different kind of, like, maybe political as well, have come to the UK. So so it's probably been happening over the last 3 to 4 years, but has become more and more over the last, like, 2 years, I'd say. So for me, when I was at my last church in Leicester, we had one guy who was a asylum seeker, come over here to claim asylum. I met him and I really got to know him, and that was my first sort of experience with someone coming over here with, like, very little English and coming to our churches. And just, like, incredible. I thought, like, wow, we don't get an awful lot of visitors, especially non-English speaking visitors. So it was really exciting. So I got to know him and his situation. And then I finished my job in Leicester, and then I got asked if I wanted to help out at a meeting in the north of England. So I lived with a brother and sister's house there, and that was a Christadelphian church which had just got a huge influx of refugees and asylum seekers who'd all come to the local hostels and then would come to that meeting. So about 60 baptised, like non-English speaking people, and about 20, 30 visitors every week as well. So we'd all have like translated services and then classes throughout the week as well. And that meeting actually only had about 10 English people. It was quite a small meeting to start with, so it had this huge influx of like visitors over 2-3 years. It was incredible. It was just like huge, vibrant place. And you'd walk in and someone, like, 5 people would come up to you and say hello and put a big like plate of food in front of you. And it was just like really, really friendly. So that was really great. And I was there to sort of help with like admin and like do a website and things like that, because obviously the original members felt quite overwhelmed with all these like visitors and stuff. Like they loved it, but there was just so much to do. So I spent 4 months there. And it was, really lovely. Meeting so many new people and like such enthusiasm for the gospel, and just they tell everyone they know and they bring everyone they know, and they just want to be part of this family. And I don't know, the gospel just means a lot to them. They've come and they've found like peace and security and family and forgiveness, and they really place importance on baptism. They really see themselves as a new person when they're baptised as well, which is really lovely, and they want to really be new and be different kinds of person. So it was really, really interesting. And since I now live in the Birmingham area, where we're now getting lots of different people visiting our meetings here as well, so there's just more and more people coming, which is really great. And I think it might change, significantly is changing the demographic of the Christadelphian community in the UK, which is really sometimes a bit challenging, just for like cultural and language barriers. But we're sort of working around that, and it's I think it's good. We needed a challenge here, so it's good. It's made us all sort of sit up and really get involved. So and just it's made us feel like more of a family as well, I think.
One of the things you were just talking about strikes me that it's a different type of preaching. That traditional Christadelphian preaching is, I'm going to have a lecture or the Sunday afternoon talk or whatever. We're going to do these presentations on some subject. What's happening in the Middle East or whatever.
Yeah.
But it sounds like what you're saying is find people who need help, and they're interested. But they are also, and they're not there because you're helping them. They just like being a part of this family, as you say. And, then find out that we have something to offer. So it's,
definitely. I think, because I ask some people sometimes, I think there's a lot of churches in the UK. We are not that prevalent, and we're not that, we don't do a lot of advertising, I suppose. We're not the Church of England. The people come to this country who don't know it very well would really have to seek out Christadelphians to find them, to be honest. But they said, no, like I came in and you welcomed me and I felt like I was part of family, and you feel like my real brothers and sisters now. And that's the real thing they love. And I thought, we do have that. Yeah, I'm really glad about that. And it is a different kind of, it's personal preaching, isn't it? It's creating somewhere where people feel comfortable, and like I said, with the home, a feeling of home, they feel accepted and they feel like they can belong, and they can serve as well. And that's really good. Like they are served by people and can serve. That sort of two-way relationship thing, I think, is really important. So I think,
Anything else that has gone through your mind as we've been talking about this subject that you think would be useful in the context of faith building and that sort of thing?
Faith building.
And that's the
I would
series'
say
overarching theme is how do we help our faith, with people?
Yeah, oh my goodness, yeah. I think meeting new people and having to explain your faith to them in a really simplistic way, like with the RV Light situation, I think some people you meet maybe don't come from a very academic background, don't know anything about God or the Bible, and you really just have to break it down to the bare bones of what is my faith? What do I really believe when it comes down to it? I'm not just sort of reeling off like a statement of faith or something. What does it mean to me? And why should I tell people about it? And why should people be interested in it? And I think that's when you do like that kind of preaching, that personal preaching work, maybe meeting people in your homeless shelter or going to your local refugee charity and helping out with a meal there, people say like, oh, what do you do on the weekend and things like that. You think, well, actually it's this. I've got this massive group of people who are really lovely and we've got this incredible faith and I have this new life in Jesus. I think that's like the crux of it, isn't it? And I think, yeah, for me, being forced to tell people about my faith really builds my faith. It's like, oh, what do I actually believe? Wow, yeah, this is what I believe. It's really important. So, yeah, and being involved with like the refugees and everything like that has really, helped with that as well. And witnessing like 30 baptisms over 4 months, that's incredible. That as well has been really lovely. That kind of helps. But yeah, seeing other people's enthusiasm for it as well, thinking, yeah, this really matters, and seeing it change their lives and really seeing it change them. Like seeing the kind of people they were maybe pre-baptism and see them really grow in their character and learn from people. That's really lovely. So, yeah.
Super.